Good morning, Year 4. I hope you're well. Welcome to today's English session. In today's session, you're going to be using paragraphs in non-fiction writing. So to be successful in this area of learning, you're going to be able to identify the main ideas that are drawn from more than one paragraph, and you'll be able to summarise these main ideas. And then for the second part of your success criteria for today, you will be able to create paragraphs using subheadings that are organised around a theme. So you did a bit of learning and work on this a couple of weeks ago when you were organising paragraphs around the theme of the frogs, weren't you? And you had to remember, you had to pick out where the change in the subject would be. Now, that's what we're going to be doing in Friday's lesson. And today we're going to specifically look at non-fiction writing and think about how we can use paragraphs in non-fiction writing. Now, before we begin, can you remember what the difference between non-fiction and fiction writing is? Maybe you could give some examples of the type of text that might be suggesting that it is a non-fiction text and the type of text that might be suggesting it's a fiction text. So pause the video and have a think. Can you remember the difference? Can you give some examples? Off you go. Okay, so maybe you said that the difference between non-fiction and fiction writing is that non-fiction is based on fact. It's based on things that are true. And whereas fiction is based on things that are more like a fantasy, made up stories. So some examples of non-fiction writing could be an encyclopedia, it could be a dictionary, it could be just a book that is all about facts about a certain topic. Whereas you might have given a fiction writing example as being a book, a made-up story, a fairy tale, and for example, the book The Explorer, what we're looking at in reading, is all about fiction writing, okay? Now let's have a look at some retrieval for today. So some sentences or phrases are coming up on the board now, and I want you to read them, identify where the possessive apostrophe is, and then, is it correct or is it incorrect? One of these phrases is correct, two of them are incorrect. Can you pause the video and work out which one is incorrect, please? And why? And then which two are incorrect, sorry, and which one is correct. Pause the video now and have a think. Okay, then let's have a look at the first example. The forest's plants. So the forest has possession over the plants. Absolutely, it does. However, is it stated that there's more than one forest here? No, there's not, is it? It's only because if the apostrophe is after the S, that states that it's a plural apostrophe, doesn't it? But there's not more than one forest. So that's wrong. That one's incorrect. Let's look at the second one then. The forest's plants. Now, what item, what noun has possession here? That's right, the plants have possession over something, but what do they have possession over? Do they have possession over the forests? Do the plants own the forests? No, they don't, do they? So should there really need to be a possessive apostrophe here? No, that's incorrect, isn't it? And finally then, the forest plants. Which noun has possession? Absolutely, the forests do. What do they have possession over? That's right, they have possession over the plants. Now, this possessive apostrophe after the T and before the S, does that suggest that it's a singular or plural possessive apostrophe? That's right, it suggests that it's a singular apostrophe, that there is just one forest. And absolutely, that one is correct because it doesn't say the many forest plants, it doesn't say the 4,000 forest plants, it's just the one forest. So the last one is the correct answer. And well done if you got that one too. Now we're going to look at this word today. It's the word logging. Now some of you might have heard of this word before, but actually it's a word that we will already know just by knowing the definition of it. Because the definition of logging is the process of cutting and processing trees to produce timber. So timber is that type of wood. And timber is used to basically supply the world with furniture, construction to make buildings, paper to write on, and other products too. And you can see here, it's a bit like what we've been speaking about already, that deforestation, well done. And you can see here they've cut down the trees and just using the wood, the bark from the trees to produce this material, this timber, because timber is really, really useful for making other things. And they think, well, if we can get this from the trees, then that's a really great win, because then we can supply the world with furniture, with construction, with paper and other products too. So it's this world logging. So logging can also be known as wood cutting, or if you're a lumberjack, that means that you cut down wood too, and it's just a name of, sometimes a person is called a lumberjack, or the process is called lumberjacking, by cutting down the trees. Okay, so that's just a word that you need to be familiar with today, but it's not really a brand new word, because you know the process already, you know that's what happens in rainforests, but maybe you just didn't know it was called, another word for it could be called logging. So that is a word that you might hear today. Now, this is the very first page in the book, The Great Kapok Tree. I want us to look at this map now and think, what does the map show us? Then I want us to look around the border of the page and think, why have these animals been chosen for the border? And finally, look to the right of our map and look at the layers of the rainforest. What does the picture show us of these layers? So pause the video and have a think about those 3 questions, please. Off you go. Okay, how did you do? Did you notice that on the map you have got all the continents of the world and all the oceans of the world too? Did you also notice you've got a little key down here? So you've got in dark green, it says today's rainforests. But in the lighter green colour, it's the original extent of the rainforest. So what does that map show us? That's right. It shows us that actually the dark green is how much of the rainforest we are left with, but the light green is how much we originally had. So it's showing you what's happening as more of these trees are getting cut down and these rainforests are getting destroyed. The rainforests are really condensing, and they are not as big as they used to be. Now, looking at animals around the border then, why have these animals been chosen for the border? If we look at some of them, we've got the poison arrow frog down here, you've got a tree porcupine, we've got a three-toed sloth, you've got a tree frog, so many more animals. Are they animals that we would find in the UK? Will we find them in Birmingham? No, probably not. Some of them, maybe, but actually, like you might find a butterfly, but the actual type of butterfly and the type of animals that you might find around this border are actually there because they are chosen, because they are found in the Amazon rainforest. And finally then, looking at the different layers, what does the layers picture show us? Because I can see here we've got the emergence, the canopy, the middle layer, or it's the understory, the forest floor. What is that? Ah, that's the 4 different layers of the rainforest. It's telling us that actually there's not just one big layer to the rainforest. The rainforest is sectioned into 4 different layers. And look, it's even got the animals from around the border scattered around these 4 layers, because it's showing us, what does it show us? That's right, which animals live in which part of the rainforest, because the rainforest is huge. You'll be learning that in this week's geography lesson, that the rainforest is really huge, particularly the Amazon rainforest. So all of these animals, all of the species, need to be in different areas. Now we know that we are going to be writing a persuasive letter shortly to the man to stop him from cutting down the trees in the book The Great Kapok Tree. But we need to be secure, and we need to know what type of arguments might we include. So I'll start you off. We might include the arguments about the different animals and how actually the animals will lose their habitat if the trees are being cut down due to logging and deforestation. So that is one argument that we might include. And I've wrote it like the animals in a rainforest, because that would be kind of like a subheading that I might use. Although in a letter, we're not going to be using the subheadings, but when we do plan our persuasive letter, we will write our subheading and then write all of our information about it, so then we can put that straight onto our letter. So that's one argument that we might include. So thinking about what you know about deforestation and the impact that it has on anything in the rainforest, what arguments might you include? Can you just pause the video and have a go and see if you can jot down some notes, please? All right, off you go. Okay, let's think of another argument we might include then. So we might include the general shrinking of the rainforests. We might find a statistic to give us some evidence about this. Something else we might include is the importance of the different layers of the rainforest, and actually how the different layers are really, really important for animals to settle and have their habitat there, because they each provide something different for the animals and what they need to survive. We might also include the general damage that deforestation has. You might think about the fact that lots of us and lots of animals get their food from the rainforest, such as nuts and bananas and berries and things. So if the trees are cut down, the animals can't get their food, we can't get some of our food supply, so that's a really big argument. And the whole damage that deforestation has, the fact that trees, they produce what? That's right, they produce oxygen. So actually, it's really useful for the animals because oxygen helps us to breathe. So the trees help produce oxygen, and that helps the animals too. So those are some of the arguments that you might talk about. And you also might talk about the location of the rainforest. And actually, going back to this point of the shrinking of the rainforest, you might also talk about that first picture on the Great Kapok tree, about where all the dark green parts were the current rainforests. And what did the light green parts show? That's right, the light green parts showed how much the rainforest had demolished and shrunk, basically. So you've got your evidence there, and that's a really good thing for when we're telling the man, actually, no, you can't chop down the rainforests, the trees, because actually they're already shrinking enough as it is. We don't want them to shrink anymore. And the location of the rainforest might just be your general knowledge about where they are located and why they're located where they are. Okay, you might have thought of lots of other arguments, and that's fantastic, but those are the few of the maybe subheadings that we might turn into arguments for our persuasive letter. Now, we are going to have a look at this task first of all. So these are all sentences that have been taken from a report on rainforest. So someone has written a report, maybe it might be a non-chronological report, so it's not in order, but it's stating lots of facts, a bit like what we did for the Romans topic, where we looked at Roman houses, the bathhouses, the villages, the roads, the towns, and those are our subheadings, weren't they? And in each of our subheadings we had some information about the Roman life. That's what we're going to do here. So you're going to read the statements and you're going to think, well, what section, what subheading could they come under? Could they come under maybe animals? Could they come under the different layers of the rainforest? What could they come under? And then you're going to just think about how you can group them and try and think if you can split them into 3 sections, okay? So this isn't on your resource pack, this is just what you're going to do in your head. Just read them, think, oh, what does that tell us? Does that tell us about the animals? Does that tell us about something else? And then you're going to have a go at thinking about what 3 subheadings you could classify these sentences from the report into. All right, so pause the video now, have a go. Now, if you are stuck, I will give you the 3 subheadings. So some of you might be thinking, oh, I'm still a bit stuck. So you can use the subheadings of climate, animals, and the structure of the rainforest. Those are your 3 subheadings that you are going to use today. So that might help you now. So can you now pause the video again? Have a go if you can now put these sentences into the different sections for their subheadings, ready for this report to be organised in a wonderful way. Pause the video again, please, and have a go. Okay, so that might have been made a bit easier for you. Now, I have only chosen about 9 or 10 of these sentences, and I have put them into my sections. So you can see on the board here that I have split them into climate, structure, and animals. And I've read the sentences, and I'm thinking, if we go back, I'm going to read the first one. I'm going to think, oh, tropical rainforests have a warm and wet climate with no dry season. And I'm thinking, well, actually, this is all about the weather. But it's given me that specific word there, that word climate. Climate, do you remember what the word climate means? That's right, climate means the average period of weather, the average weather over a really long period of time. So it's not like the weather where it changes every day. The climate is actually, we know that now, don't we? That it's the average weather over a really long period of time. So they can actually say, well, actually, rainforests are warm and wet most of the year round. Now I'm going to continue this video in part 2, and I'm going to be explaining how I thought about the different sections, and then it's going to be over to you to do your task. So I will see you in part 2.